Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to the 12 tribes of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who for the last 2,500 years have been in various forms of scattered throughout the earth and are now in the generation of the return of the long-awaited Mashiach, the Hebrew Messiah of the 12 tribes, YHWH. Greetings. Greetings to those who are of the Gentiles, not the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not of the bloodline of those who were placed in slave ships, but as it were, chosen in these last days to accept the Hebrew Messiah and receive him, and in so doing, receiving his scattered, chosen people. Greetings. Blessings upon those that even on Shabbat are working to save lives in the healthcare field and the first responders that come out to accidents, that come out to disasters, that risk their lives to save lives. Blessings upon those that pick up garbage to keep our streets and sidewalks clean. Blessings upon those that simply for our convenience do the humble task of making deliveries of food and other stuff for us. Double blessings on the people that are out in the earth trying to save, deliver, rescue, recover the victims of prostitution, the victims of child prostitution and pornography and child pornography, the victims of child molestation and pedophilia, the victim of human trafficking and sex slave operations. Blessings upon them and blessings upon these victims. Double curses on the profiteers and perverts that are responsible for these things. Finally, blessings upon the homeless. 600,000 people in the United States of America, including men, women, and children, even now in January, without a roof over their head. And millions more around the earth in similar or worse situations. Blessings upon them, for theirs is the kingdom. Greetings to the brothers and sisters in the chat. Brother Jacobus, Brother Kelly, Chaplain Lewis is the way, Righteous is the way, Isha, Junior, Zadok, Brother Hines. Blessings to all you and many more that come in. Thank you for joining. We are going to continue in our study in the book of Revelation. And as I mentioned to you, as we've studied the previous parts of this book for 2022 series, Revelation, and we're now going through the 7 churches, and today we're dealing with the 5th church, Sardis. As I mentioned to you before, the book of Revelation covers time periods that involve things that have happened in the past, things that are happening now, and things that are about to happen in the future. After all, what we know is the book is entitled The Revelation of Messiah YHWH, which Yah gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John, who bare record of the word of Yah and of all things that he saw. The servants we have established are his true bloodline Hebrew people that have been scattered throughout the earth, and those who have been chosen by Yah in these last days from among the Gentiles to dwell among the Israelite nation. So with that in mind, usually I will go to other scriptures to lead up to the scripture that we're dealing with, in this case, Sardis. But I'm going to kind of reverse that today. And before I get started, I want to also say something to you about the next church. See, in fact, let's take a look in Revelation chapter 1 first. Revelation chapter 1. Revelation chapter 1. We're looking at the part of Revelation 1 where while John was on, or Yochanan was on the island of Patmos, he saw Messiah. Messiah appeared to him, and the angel showed him Messiah. Okay, so let's take a look at that in Revelation chapter 1, beginning at verse 9. We're really looking for verse 19, but I want context for this particular situation. So Revelation chapter 1, beginning at verse 9. I, John, or Yochanan, who also am your brother and companion in tribulation, and in the kingdom and patience of Messiah, YHWH, was in the isle that is called Patmos, for the word of Yah, and for the testimony of Messiah, YHWH. I was in the spirit on Yahweh's day, and heard behind me a great voice as of a trumpet, saying, I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. And what thou seest, write in a book, and send it unto the 7 churches which are in Asia, unto Ephesus, and unto Smyrna, and unto Pergamos, and unto Thyatira, and unto Sardis, and unto Philadelphia, and unto Laodicea. And I turned to see the voice that spake with me. And being turned, I saw 7 golden candlesticks. Again, just as matter of review, we went through this, but John is seeing the first apartment of the heavenly sanctuary, of which Moses made a copy when our fathers left Egypt. Okay, so he's seeing the original, from which the copy Moses made was made after the pattern of the original, and he's seeing the furniture in that holy place, 7 golden candlesticks. Verse 13, and in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. Verse 16, and he had in his right hand 7 stars, and out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was as the sun shineth in his strength. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. And he laid his right hand upon me, saying unto me, fear not, I am the first and the last. So, brethren, we know we also saw this description and the same reaction in the book of Daniel. Now, we're going to be studying the book of Daniel by the grace of the Most High this weekend very heavily as I talk about where we are today. But in the book of Daniel, it also described Messiah, and John saw him, same color Messiah, everything. And Daniel, saw him, and Daniel fell also as one dead in the presence of the glorified Mashiach. So here, John is discovering the same thing. Of course, remember, Mashiach YHWH, when he was on the earth as a man, he ate with John. John fellowshiped with him. John leaned on his breast the night of the betrayal. But this, what he's seeing here, is in a glorified state, similar to what they saw when him and his brother James and Peter was on a mountain and saw him transfigured, and they all fell down as dead men. So here he is in the glorified state, which we're going to soon see him. In fact, the whole earth is going to see him. Praise the Most High. Let's continue. Verse 18. I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen. And have the keys of hell and of death. Now watch verse 19. Write the things which thou hast seen, and the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. So there are things that has already happened in the book of Revelation. There are things that are now happening in the book of Revelation. And there are things that are shortly coming to pass, as Revelation 1:1 showed us in the book of Revelation. What Sardis represents is the past. But I want to tell you, It's the recent past. This is how close we get. It's the recent past. Not only that, when we get to Philadelphia, it's where we are. Okay, Philadelphia is where we are. And that's why we need Daniel to explain that. But what we're going to see in Sardis is the recent past and how we got to where we are. Because the 7 churches, as I explained, are in harmony with the 7 seals, which are in harmony with the 7 trumpets. And it's interesting. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm not trying to confuse you. Never try to do that. Welcome, Mark. Mark, while I remember, Mark, I did mean to touch base with you. I'm going to email you. I just remember. Thank you for. I see your name there. I remember that. I got to touch base with you. But when you get to the 7s, the 7th church, the 7th seal, the 7th trumpet, within those 7s are the 7 last plagues. So you got the 7 churches and seals, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, all the way through. When you get to the 7, within that 7 last plagues. I know that sounds crazy, right? But as we get through it, you'll start to see it. There's a rhythm to the book of Revelation, just like there's a rhythm to the Hebrews. Okay? Not accidental. All right? Just like when you read the scriptures, even there's a rhythm sometimes. You can see the rhythm in the prophets when they're writing. There's not arbitrary, there's a rhythm to it. Sometimes they repeat themselves, they keep repeating things. Same with Revelation. Okay? So we're talking about Sardis today. Like I said, tomorrow, when we study Philadelphia by the grace of the Most High, that's going to take 2 full sessions. Okay. When we study Philadelphia, I'm sorry, I said Revelation. When we study Philadelphia tomorrow, that's going to take 2 full sessions. That's where we are today. Okay. And so we got to talk about that in depth, and we got to go through Daniel to do that. All right. So I'm going to tell you that. All right. So Revelation chapter 3. Let's look at Sardis. Okay. Revelation chapter 3, beginning at verse 1 and going down from verse 1 to verse 6. Revelation chapter 3 from 1 to 6. And unto the angel of the church of Sardis write, these things saith he that hath the 7 spirits of Yah and the 7 stars. I know thy works, that thou hast a name that thou livest and art dead. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain, that are ready to die, for I have not found thy works perfect before Yah. Remember therefore now that how thou hast received and heard, and hold fast and repent. If therefore thou shalt not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt not know what hour I will come upon thee. Thou hast a few names even in Sardis, which have not defiled their garments, and they shall walk with me in white, for they are worthy. He that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment. And I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. Now, let me explain some things first. As I mentioned, these churches with the seals and the trumpets are in a chronological order. Okay? They are in a chronological order. That's why they go in 7s like that. And so they're representing time periods in the history, present history, past history, and future of the Hebrews. That's what they're representing. Because the true Hebrews are the servants, as we saw in chapter 1 of Revelation when we studied that. They are the servants of Yah. Israel is his servants. Okay? There is no substitute for the bloodline of Israel. And there is no grafted in, listen, there's no grafted in Gentile without real Hebrews. Okay. So let's look. In fact, let's remind, because I got some Christians, sending me, trying to send, what do you call that? Trolling and acting the fool, because they can't handle that truth. But let's take a look at Romans real quick, just to review that. Romans, and really this is Romans 9, 10, and 11. But let's just, for the sake of time, because we got a lot to cover, let's look at Romans chapter 11. And Paul is going to explain this. Romans chapter 11, again, we want to look in some context. While we would like to read 9, 10, and 11, we're going to start at verse 11, but we're going to try to get some context. Now, I'm going to start at, let's see. I'm going to start at verse 5 of Romans chapter 11, okay? Even so then, at this present time, also there is a remnant according to the election of grace. And if by grace, then it is no more of works. Otherwise, grace is no more grace. But if it be of works, then it is no more grace. Otherwise, work is no more work. What then? Israel, that is the bloodline, hath not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the elect have obtained it, and the rest were blinded. According as it is written, Yah hath given them the spirit of slumber, eyes that they should not see, and ears that they should not hear unto this day. That's Isaiah chapter 29, unless you didn't know. Paul was continually quoting the prophets. Verse 9, and David said, let their table be made a snare and a trap and a stumbling block and a recompense unto them. Let their eyes be darkened that they may not see, and bow down their back always. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Asking the question about the bloodline Israelite nation. Have they stumbled that they should fall? Yah forbid. But rather through their fall, salvation is come unto the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy. So the purpose of the fall, which was prophesied, was that the Gentiles would be able to come in to the nation. Okay, let's continue. Verse 12. Now, if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? So if they were blessed because we stumbled, what blessing would they get when we awaken? Let's continue. Verse 13. For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine office. So now we have a clear understanding. He is talking about the bloodline Israelites, and he's addressing the Gentiles that have been saved, okay, that have received Messiah. So he said, I speak to you Gentiles, because he says he is appointed, and he was, as the apostle to the Gentiles. Okay. Verse 14. If by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are of my flesh, and might save some of them. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches. Now watch verse 17 very carefully. And if some of the branches be broken off, that is, some of the original Hebrew nation be broken off, and thou, you Gentiles, being a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, among whom? So the wild olive tree Gentiles were saved by being grafted into the original Hebrews. They don't become their own nation separate, but they're grafted into the original Hebrews. Let's continue. Were grafted in among them, and with them partakers of the root and fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches. See, Gentiles shouldn't think that all of a sudden they're spiritual Israel and that they've taken the place of the bloodline. Okay, that's what some Christians think, but that's wrong. If you saved among the Hebrews, and you cannot claim to be trusting in a Messiah that's the line of the tribe of Judah, and then casting away his bloodline people and claim you taking their place. That's arrogance. Matter of fact, let's listen to Paul some more. Boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. Thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and thou standest by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. You are only in because of faith. They are in because of blood. Let's continue. For if Yah spared not the natural branches, take heed, lest he also spare not thee. Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of Yah on them which fell, severity. But toward thee, goodness, if thou continue in his goodness. Otherwise, thou also shalt be cut off. Christians. And they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in. So they can be regrafted into their own tree. For Yah is able to graft them in again. Again, he explains this in verse 24. For if thou wert cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? So as Gentiles who are not natural Israelites are grafted into the nation, so the natural Israelites can be grafted back in to their own nation. Does that make sense? There is no substitute for the original nation. It never went away, as we're going to see in Sardis. It never went away. Okay? Christianity is a new religion, as we saw in Thyatira, as we saw in Pergamos. It's a new religion. It's not Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's religion, nor their children's religion. Okay? Let's continue. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part is happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. So there's a limit to the Gentiles. And there's no limit to Israel. So don't ever hear or believe that Christians are spiritual Israel. They're not. There is no spiritual Israel in the Bible. Either you are grafted into the original Israelites, which means you're observers of Torah and the prophets and the law, or you're not. You can create any religion you want and call it whatever you want. Christianity is a man-made religion. But don't claim to be followers of the Hebrew Messiah, because you're not. And don't claim that the true Hebrews are not here, because we are. Okay? Now, with that in mind, let's understand what Thyatira taught us when we studied Thyatira last week. You recall, that is first started with Constantine, right, in Pergamos, and then Constantine's Christianity in over 2-century period, starting in the 4th century. In fact, let's go back to the beginning. So we have the 1st century Messiah's people who are originally the original bloodline Hebrew. Here come the apostle Paul, whose name was Saul, that was appointed, as we just read, by Mashiach to bring the truth to Gentiles. And he was the second one to bring the truth because Peter was first used to bring the truth to Italian people, led by this man called Cornelius in Acts chapter 10. But Peter wasn't appointed to the Gentiles, Paul was. Peter, as Paul would point out in Galatians, as we saw, was appointed to reach Hebrew, which is why Peter's 2 letters and James's letter is to Hebrew. Paul's letter are to Hebrews that lived among Gentiles called Grecians and Gentiles, okay, who are grafted into the nation. You see, brethren, there are people that are bloodline Israelites in the first century that rejected Messiah. That's who he was talking about, being broken off. But there are Hebrews in the first century that received Messiah, okay, as we saw in the book of Acts. So then after that first century, we saw in the 4th century, so for 3 centuries, you're dealing with persecution of original Hebrews who are trusting in Messiah. Sabbath keeping, observant Hebrews. Gentiles called them Christian. They did not call them, as we saw from the word, when we looked at the 3 places in the entire Bible that the word Christian is observed, Gentiles called them Christian. It wasn't them calling each other Christian. Okay? So when you get to the 4th century, around 303, you got a man named Diocletian, a Roman emperor that determined to kill all the followers of Messiah and the non-followers, all Israelites. And he was attacking them, especially there was a period of 10 years that the Bible mentions where he really was trying his best to rid the earth of any remnant of the Hebrews. But he couldn't. Matter of fact, the more he killed them, the more people became believers. So then came Constantine with another trick. And the Bible mentions Balaam, if you recall, the Bible mentions Balaam, because you remember, Balaam was asked by the Moabite king to curse Israel. Remember that? Numbers 25, 26. And 26, he was asked to curse them. But when he tried to curse them, blessings came. And that was Diocletian. He was trying to curse them. But the more he tried, the more people came to the truth. Blessings came. And then, just as Balaam changed his tactic, here come Constantine. And that's why Pergamos mentions Balaam. Because Balaam counseled Balak, he said, look, I can't curse him, but you can get him to curse themselves. How? Send the most beautiful Moabite women into the Israelite camp. Let them mingle with the men. And then let them cause the men to worship the Moabite gods. And the Most High will curse them for you. And that's what happened. Here come Constantine. He declares he's going to become a Christian. And he begins by saying he needs to combine some of his pagan ways with some of the Christians. And that's how you got the beginning of what we call Christianity today. Over 2 centuries after his death, that combined paganistic religion continued until it got to Thyatira. You get to the 6th century. In the 500s, Thyatira becomes established entity, an institution, an official institution called the Catholic Church. The word Catholic means universal. It's the one universal church. And it says that the Bishop of Rome is the corrector of all heretics. Now you have the establishment of the Roman Catholic Church. That was the 6th century. That was Thyatira. But there were 2 other influential religions. You see, today, right now, you have 3 religions that are called what? They're called Abrahamic. 3 what they call Abrahamic religions. 3 main ones. The first is Christianity. That was established in the 6th century, as I mentioned. In the 7th century came the second Abrahamic religion, Islam. And Islam was vying against the Roman Catholic Church for members or for converts. And both of these religions would go into other countries and force the natives to convert. Okay. Islam went from what we call now the Middle East and Asia all the way into Africa, what we call now Africa. Christianity was vying with that. Christianity had all of Europe, and they were going to what we call the islands in the Caribbean. We'll talk about that as we talk about Sardis. That was the 7th century. Then the third leg of the three so-called Abrahamic religions came in the 8th century, because here come the Ashkenazis from Khazaria. The Khazarians had their own pagan religion. And now you had these two new entities pushing, both vying to force them to convert to either Christianity or Islam. They chose plan C because you had unbelievers that were Hebrews in Europe that taught them Europeans a religion. And they converted to it, and it was called Judaism. More specifically, for those who might be from the Judaism faith and watching this, it's called Talmudic Judaism. There is no Talmud in the Bible. There is no Islam in the Bible. Why is there no Islam in the Bible? Because there's no prophets outside of Hebrew Israelite prophets in the Bible. Islam was started by an Arab prophet. Now, he was a Semite, but that don't mean nothing. The chosen seed is from Isaac, a Hebrew Israelite. Not Abraham, not Muhammad, an Arab. So there's no Islam in the Bible. And of course, there's no Christianity-led Catholic Church in the Bible either, except the whore. So now you had these three new religions pushing their way through the earth, led by Rome. Okay? And now the true Hebrews, the bloodline, those in Europe, were scattered through Europe. We used to dominate what is now Portugal and Spain. We used to dominate that. But then, as this new Christian religion came, they were forcing everybody to convert. Those that didn't were suffering. And they were sometimes banished on islands to be rehabilitated by certain orders of Catholic priests. That's where you get St. John, St. Thomas, these islands, Grenada. That's where you get these islands. They were banished there to be educated and converted to Christianity. Also, as we know, there's African. Funny, I was talking to a brother today. He's from Nigeria. And he saw me and he said, "You are Yoruba." He said, "I could tell by your face, by your head, you're a Yoruba." And then I told him, I said, "It's interesting because I did my DNA and it says I come from Nigeria and Benin Togo." He said, "That's Yoruba. That's Yoruba kingdom." And we were talking and we both agreed that there was a Mali empire. There was an Ashanti empire. These were Muslim empires in West Africa. And they were forcing Hebrews that had fled there to convert. Okay, so that when we were sold by the Hamites into slavery, a lot of our brothers was Muslim. Then we were sold to those of the children of Japhet who forced us into Christianity. Okay, and of course, whoever was behind the banking and the money operations were from Judaism, who insured the ships. So the three Abrahamic religions enslaved the true Hebrews, led by Rome. One of the four horns that we read about in Zechariah, if you recall, that scattered Israel and Judah. Okay, so that's the head dog right there. All right, That brings us to Sardis. Now, Sardis. Look up that word in the Greek. You'll find G4554. That's the number for the Greek term for Sardis. And they don't have a meaning for it. They'll just say a city in Asia of unknown origin definition. But if you look at it, it reminds you of sardine or sardius, which is a gem. And in fact, in the Greek, 4556, 4557, G4556, 45 is the gem. Okay, so that was one of the stones. And let me show you something. This is going to get a little deep, but I think you're going to understand. Praise the Most High. Let's go to Exodus chapter 28. When Moses was being told by the Most High to prepare the sanctuary, part of that, he was going to prepare a certain garment or certain garments for Aaron to wear. Aaron was going to be the high priest. Okay? And one of those things that he was told to prepare was a breastplate. The breastplate was going to be on Aaron, and it was going to have 12 stones, 12 precious gems in the breastplate. Each gem represented a tribe of Israel, the original 12. Now, I'm not talking about Ephraim and Manasseh. I'm talking about Joseph. Okay? The original 12 would be on the breastplate. And they would be in the order of their birth. Okay? Are you following me so far? So let's look at Exodus chapter 28, because Sardis comes from a precious stone. So let's take a look at it in Exodus chapter 28. Let's see. I'm going to start. Okay, I'm going to start at verse. In fact, let me start at verse 1. I'm going to start at Exodus 28, verse 1, just for context. I just want to get good context on this here. Some of it's not relevant, but bear with me, because really what we're looking at is down in chapter 20, chapter 18, verse 17 down to verse 22. But I want good context for this so you see the whole thing, okay? Bear with me. Thank you for your patience. Exodus chapter 28, beginning at verse 1. So now Most High is giving, Most High is with Moses in Mount Sinai at this point, and he's giving him instructions. And these are among the instructions he's given him. And take thou unto thee Aaron thy brother and his sons with him from among the children of Israel, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office, even Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, Ithamar, Aaron's sons. Now, this is what the Bible calls the law that was given on Mount Sinai. This is part of that. People get the covenant confused with the law. The covenant is commonly referred to as the 10 Commandments. That's the covenant. This is the law, because it was never given before now. The covenant came in Eden with Adam, and it was reiterated to the chosen people. But the law was never given to anybody until now. This, what we're reading here, was not given to any previous people, nor any subsequent people. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So he's choosing Aaron and his sons as priesthood. Okay, let's continue. And thou shalt make holy garments for Aaron thy brother, for glory and for beauty. And thou shalt speak unto all that are wise-hearted, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, that they may make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. So you're making special clothes for Aaron, that he can minister to Yah in the priest's office. Okay. And these are the garments which they shall make: a breastplate, first thing, a breastplate. Okay. And an ephod, and a robe, and a broidered coat, a mitre, and a girdle. They shall make holy garments for Aaron thy brother and his sons, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. And they shall take gold and blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen. Question. Look, gold, purple, scarlet. without the blue and the fine linen. Where did you see that before? You've seen it before. Gold, purple, and scarlet. There's no blue in this other place you've seen it. There's no blue and there's no fine linen, but you've seen gold and purple and scarlet. You know where you saw that? Y'all know where you saw that? That's exactly right, Brother Mark. That's what the whore wears. So you see, the whore doesn't wear the blue and the fine linen because the fine linen represents the righteousness of saints. They don't have that. And blue represents, remember the ribbon of blue to remember what? Yah's law, the covenant. They don't have that either. But yeah, they wear the purple and the scarlet and they got the gold. Isn't that interesting? Let's continue. And they shall make the ephod of gold, of blue, and of purple, of scarlet, and of fine twined linen with cunning work. It shall have 2 shoulder pieces thereof joined at the 2 edges thereof, and they shall be joined together. And the curious girdle of the ephod, which is upon it, shall be of the same, according to the work thereof, even of gold, of blue, and purple, and scarlet, and fine twined linen. And thou shalt take 2 onyx stones, engrave on them the names of the children of Israel, 6 of their names on one stone, and 6 other 6 names of the rest on the other stone, according to their birth. So they're being put on the stone in the order of their birth. Okay, very important. With the work of an engraver in stone, like the engraving of a signet, thou shalt engrave the 2 stones with the names of the children of Israel. Thou shalt make them to be set in couches and ouches of gold. Thou shalt put the 2 stones upon the shoulders of the ephod for stones of memorial unto the children of Israel. And Aaron shall bear their names before Yahweh upon his 2 shoulders for memorial. Now I want you, please remember, what was given to Moses was simply a copy of what the true high priest was going to wear. So just to let you, remind you, Messiah is wearing something where he has the children of Israel on his heart. The true children of Israel. As he's ministering in the priest's office. Because Aaron was going to minister to the Most High with the children of Israel on him. Okay? Isn't that powerful? Not everybody else, just the 12 tribes. Okay? So let's continue. Verse 13. And thou shalt make ouches of gold and 2 chains of pure gold at the ends of wreathen work shalt thou make them, and fasten the wreathen chains to the ouches. And thou shalt make the breastplate of judgment with cunning work. After the work of the ephod thou shalt make it, of gold, of blue, of purple, of scarlet, and of fine twined linen thou shalt make it. 4 square it shall be, being double. A span shall be the length thereof, and a span shall be the breadth thereof. And thou shalt set it in settings of stones, even 4 rows of stones. So you can have 4 rows of stones, 4 rows in order of birth. Okay? So now, notice, in fact, we only need to go to verse 17. Notice, and thou shalt set it in stones, even 4 rows of stones. The first row shall be the first stone, Sardis. Sardis. A topaz and a carbuncle. This shall be the first row. So now you know. Sardis, precious gem. Who is the firstborn? Genesis chapter 49. Because what this tells us is why Sardis has a name that lives but is dead. Okay? Notice Genesis 49. I'm going to begin at verse 1. Jacob is about to die. He's 147 years old. And he's going to give prophecy about his children, all 12 of his sons. And then he's going to roll up in his bed and die. So he starts and he gives them a prophecy about them in their order. Genesis 49, beginning at verse 1. I'm going to read down to verse 4 because we're dealing with the Sardis. First one, Sardis. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel, your father. Reuben, there's your firstborn. Sardis is Reuben. Okay, there's your firstborn. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defilest thou it. And he went up to my couch. So what happened? Reuben was supposed to get the blessing of the firstborn. What does that mean? So if you have 12 sons, what you would do, the firstborn gets a double blessing. Firstborn always gets a double blessing. That's the rule, okay? That blessing, if you had 12 sons, means you're going to divide all your estate by 13. And 2 parts of that 13 go to the firstborn. And 1/13 goes to every other. See what I'm saying? So if you have 3 sons, you divide your estate into 4. Okay? 1/4 goes to 2 sons, and then half goes to the firstborn. That's the blessing of the firstborn. He lost that blessing because he had sex with one of his father's concubines. Okay? He had sex with one of his father's concubines. That's why he lost the blessing of the firstborn. But instead, it went to Joseph because Joseph was the firstborn of Rachel. Reuben was the firstborn of Leah. Joseph was the firstborn of Rachel. Rachel had 2 sons, Joseph and Benjamin. And Joseph got a double blessing, which was represented in Ephraim and Manasseh. He received the blessing of the firstborn. Reuben was supposed to get it, but he sinned against his father and lost it. Sardis, thou hast a name that liveth, and you're dead. So Sardis represents the Hebrews that were unstable, was not going to excel, lost the blessing. Y'all following me so far? We just getting started. Y'all follow me so far? Okay. All right. Everybody got that so far? So good. All right. All right. So, all right. Now, a name that liveth. Let's go now to Deuteronomy. Let's go to Deuteronomy, where we know the curses of Deuteronomy 28, which we recognize as ourselves. Notice Deuteronomy chapter 28. Deuteronomy chapter 28. I'm going to begin at verse 58 of Deuteronomy chapter 28, and I'm going to go down to verse 64. Deuteronomy chapter 28 from verse 58 to verse 64. If thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book, that thou mayest fear this glorious and fearful name. Now, in the King James, it just says the Lord thy God in big letters, but it is YHWH thy most high, or YHWH thy Elohim. Okay? That's his name. Then YHWH will make thy plagues wonderful, and the plagues of thy seed, even great plagues, and of long continuance, and sore sicknesses, and of long continuance. Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which thou hast afraid of, and they shall cleave unto thee. Also every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, then will YHWH bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. And ye shall be left few in number, whereas ye were as the stars of heaven for multitude, because thou wouldest not obey the voice of YHWH thy most high. And it shall come to pass that as YHWH rejoiced over you to do you good and to multiply you, so YHWH will rejoice over you to destroy you and to bring you to naught. And ye shall be plucked from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. And YHWH shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, wood and stone. Tell me that ain't happened. What does it mean, wood and stone? The wood is the Christian cross. The stone is Mecca. Thou shalt serve other gods, which thy fathers have not known, wood and stone. If you don't remember and fear the name of your Most High, Yahweh thy Most High. Now watch this. 2 Chronicles, chapter 7, verse 14. 2 Chronicles 7:14. I'm going to start at verse 13, and I'm going to go to 14. If I shut up heaven, that there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, if my people, which are called by my name, don't forget the fearful and glorious name. You have a name that lives, Sardis, but you're dead. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Sardis has a name that liveth and is dead. Let's go back again to Revelation chapter 3 and look at that again. Sardis. Revelation chapter 3, verse 1. And unto the angel of the church of Sardis write, these things saith he that hath the seven spirits of Yahweh and the seven stars. I know thy works, that thou hast a name that liveth and are dead. So here is a period of time after the establishment of the three Abrahamic religions, when we started now being enslaved, being converted to Christianity and Islam, and we had a name that liveth, and we were dead. We were taken into slavery by Muslims and Christians. In 1492, when you get a chance, look up the year 1492. 1492 was when the Europeans were coming everywhere and killing, raping, pillaging, and taking over every place the Hebrews were. All the islands, what we call South America, Central America, Mexico, the United States was called now, 1492. West Africa, they were going everywhere. And they were converting, killing, taking over, and raping assets. Dominican Republic, Haiti, all the islands. 1492, look up that. Columbus going everywhere, Ponce de Leon, all of them people coming with the blessing of the Pope and the King to take over. Because then we were being converted, and we still had a name that did not change the fact that we were Hebrews. You understand? That don't change that. But we were converted. So we had a name that we lived, the name of Israel. But we were dead. Does that make sense, y'all? Okay. People talk about, 1619, when the first so-called ship came over here to Virginia. Okay. Yeah. But they were coming all over the place before that. But Judah did come here, in the 17th century. They were coming all over the place. Okay. And they were taking over. Because now we had Sardis. That's Sardis right there. That's Sardis period. Okay. That's Sardis period. All right. Also at that time, when I was a Christian, they used to teach us that this was the Dark Ages, when Europeans were received. But see, let's just go over this Dark Ages thing for a second. I just want to reiterate some things that is true that nobody can deny. Nobody can deny what I'm about to tell you. During the so-called Middle Ages, you had Catholic priests that were reading their Bible because they were one of the few people that were allowed to read the actual scriptures, the manuscripts that they had gotten from the Hebrew and the Greek. They had to have a license to read it. All priests had that license. As the priests were reading these things, Catholic priests, they started seeing differences in what the scriptures were saying versus what the Catholic Church taught. And they began to question different ones. John Huss, John Knox, Martin Luther, William Tyndale, and many others, Zwingli. They were questioning. These were all Catholics. And they were questioning what they were being taught. And they started questioning so much that the leaders, the popes and archbishops of the Catholic Church were not liking this. And they tried to suppress it. But instead, it got bigger. And then you had them now being called, listen, reformers. And that period is called the Reformation. Why were they called reformers? Because their goal, object, and aim was to reform the Catholic Church so that it would obey the scriptures. That was the goal of them being reformers. Okay? Nobody can deny what I'm saying. So as reformers, that's what they wanted to do. And then as it started getting really hectic in the struggle between them and their mother church, they started being called Protestants. Why were they being called Protestant? Because they were protesting the Catholic Church's resistance to reform. Okay? We called it later Protestant. Whenever a group is protesting another group, for example, all of the times, almost every time a year in Washington, D.C., you got some group of people protesting in front of the White House or protesting in the Congress. And you saw on January 6th when the insurrectionists came and did what they did. All of these are forms of protest. And when you are protesting, you are acknowledging, the protester is acknowledging the supremacy of the entity it is protesting. Does that make sense to y'all? So if I'm going to Washington to protest something, I'm acknowledging that the government has power and authority, and I am protesting against some policy or something they're doing in an attempt to get them to change. Okay? So that the protester is lesser than the protestee. So these Protestants were Protestants that were protesting their mother church. So let's go over this. They were trying to reform the Catholic Church to get to the scriptures that they had discovered, and they were protesting it. Now, as we look back, did they succeed in reforming the Catholic Church? That was their goal. That was the aim. That's why they were called reformers. That's why it was called the Reformation. They were trying to reform Rome. I'm asking the question. Did they succeed? Or did they fail? They failed. I think it's quite clear. They did not reform. So what you got now is a whole bunch of these now denominations that Tony Bishop said, y'all need to just come home because they no more protests. And he was right. Because instead of them protesting and getting reformation from Rome, Rome used the Jesuit order to infiltrate all and take over all. The Jesuit order has taken over every Christian denomination, every last one. Go listen to videos on and read books about a man named Alberto Rivera. Alberto Rivera, a Spanish man. He was a Jesuit and he worked for Rome. And he said, I used to train Jesuits to infiltrate churches. We infiltrated all the churches. That was my job. He said we send hundreds of them into Protestant churches every year. And he was a 60s and 70s guy. And he left the Catholic Church and joined a Christian church. But he admits we infiltrated all of them. Of course, they killed him because he belonged to them. Of course, they infiltrated all because they belonged to the Catholic Church. So the Reformation, that was Thyatira, and then Christians used to teach that was also Sardis, but no. This whole thing's about Hebrews. And so the name that lives, we just saw the word. I didn't show nothing but the word where it said, thou hast this glorious name, YHWH THY Elohim, and those that are called by my name, the Hebrews, if you call upon me and you repent of your sin and turn from your wicked way, I will heal you. But we had a name that lives and is dead because we were now Christians and Muslims. You following me? Because then we became Christians and Muslims by force. But then after a while, we got, what's the word I'm looking for? We got mixed in with them and thought we was like we are today. We mixed into these cultures of the Western Europe cultures, as European culture, and we think that's us. It's not us. The Creator has never forgotten his promise to Abraham or the words to our fathers. He has never forgotten. Okay? Never. His promises are eternal. And his prophetic word is going to come to pass. And he said we would awaken. He said we were going to awaken multiple times in the prophets, as we know. And that's what's going on now. So Sardis is the period before the awakening. Philadelphia, as we're going to see tomorrow, is the awakening. Okay, let's continue in Sardis though. Look, verse 2 of Revelation chapter 3. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain that are ready to die, for I have not found thy works perfect before Yah. Remember therefore how thou hast received and heard, and hold fast and repent. If thou wilt not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt not know what hour I will come upon thee. Now, this is important. Many people get this confused. Many people think that nobody's going to know when Messiah comes back, but that's not true. Remember what this book is titled, The Revelation of Messiah, to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. So the servants are going to know. The heathen are not going to know. In fact, let's take a look at some scripture so we can see that. We can verify that by the word of the Most High. So let's start first in Luke chapter 21. I'm going to do Luke 21 and Matthew 24 so that we get some context, and then we're going to look at another scripture, okay? So Luke 21, notice what it says. This is also a prophecy of the end and of the destruction of Jerusalem by Messiah. So let's start at verse 24 and go down to verse 36. Luke chapter 21 from 24 to 36. Notice what it said. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, talking about our fathers, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Talking about Romans. Okay. And they shall be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, upon the earth, distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. Are we not seeing that? Men's hearts failing them for fear, for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. And he spake to them a parable. Behold, the fig tree and all the trees. When they now shoot forth, ye see and know of your own selves that summer is now nigh at hand. So likewise, ye, when ye see these things come to pass, know ye that the kingdom of Yah is near at hand. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away till all be fulfilled. Many people get this confused and think when he says this generation, he's talking about the people of the first century. He's talking about generation of human beings. Because if it wasn't him, as he shows in Matthew, all of us would be destroyed if he didn't hold it up. If he didn't hold back, man would have destroyed itself off the earth many times all over the last few millennia. So when he's talking about this generation, he's talking about human beings, the whole earth of human beings, okay? Many people get this confused. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and the cares of this life, so that the day come upon you unaware. Watch. For as a snare it shall come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch verse 36. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things. To escape. There's escape for Yah's chosen. And to stand before the Son of Man. We're going to come back to that when we get to the sixes. But let's look at Matthew 24. Matthew 24. Going to start at verse 37. Matthew 24, going to start at verse 37. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Now look, you remember the flood. Did not Yah tell Noah when to go in the ark? Didn't he arrange for the animals to come to Noah, and then he said, go in the ark? And Noah didn't shut the door to the ark. Yah shut the door. Shut Noah and his family and them animals in the ark. So Noah knew when to go inside. The rest of the earth wasn't paying no attention. As he said, they kept doing what they do until it was too late. Let's look again. 1 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Yes, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Watch closely. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. I'm going to read from verse 1. From verse 1 down to verse 5. Okay? 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, from 1 to 5. But of the times and the season, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of YHWH so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. That's the Gentiles and unbelievers. Notice what he says in verse 4. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are all the children of light and the children of the day. We are not of the night nor of the darkness. So the children of the day are going to know. The children of the night are not going to know. And so Sardis, he was saying, I'm going to come on you as a thief. Why? Because as you following these religions of Christianity and Islam, you're not going to know what's coming. As you integrate into the culture that has enslaved you, you're not going to know what's coming. You're going to be just like the Gentiles. You're going to be like the Grecians. But he says, let's continue back in Revelation chapter 3, verse 4. Watch this. Revelation 3, verse 4. Thou hast a few names, even in Sardis, which have not defiled their garments, and they shall walk with me in white, for they are worthy. Who is that? Y'all know that in the continent of Africa, there has been and still are Israelites that know who they are. They're in places like Ethiopia and South Africa. They're in Nigeria, the Igbos, they're the Yorubas. There are people that are in various parts of the country, of the continent, that have never left the truth. They came there, ran there because they were coming off the land, but now they've come back. As I said, even at that time, they were still there. Not only that, do you know that there's slaves that were in South Carolina, and they had a church because Massa would let them get together on Sunday, and they found writings in the church. I forgot where the church was in South Carolina, but they found, I think it was in Charleston. They found writings that were Hebrew. So they would receive the names of the master, but they always knew it wasn't just Kunta Kinte is a made-up character of Roots, Kunta Kinte from Roots, but they were real people that actually remembered their names, actually remembered they were Hebrew, and went along with what master was saying so they wouldn't get whipped, but remembered who they were. See? So he said there's a few names even in Sardis. Okay? And all during this time, you're not going to hear this in the media. Why? Because again, they make us the hidden ones. As Psalm 83 tells us, they want our names wiped away. They want to replace us with the Ashkenazis. But that don't mean nothing to the Most High. He knows who is chosen. Okay? And he said, a few names in Sardis. They have Ethiopian, you got them in Sudan, you got them in South Africa, you got them in West Africa that have never forgotten. Now, some of them Ashkenazis came running down there as quick as they could and slapped that Star of David on them to try to act like, this is what no, that wasn't their original. Okay. And remember, they got put there because we were running from the Romans because of our sin. So some of them were repentant and tried to hang on to the tradition, to the circumcision, to the law and the prophets. Okay. You have a few names, even in Sardis. You have people here in the United States. Here in Virginia, they found a town and the town had a memorial to the Hebrew slaves. Here in Virginia. So you find pockets of people who remembered who they were, how we got here, all through history. Okay, even in Sardis, you have names that have not defiled their garments, and they shall walk before me in white, for they are worthy. Praise the Most High. Okay, now that, again, I told you, that's recent history. When we're talking now, we're dealing all the way now from the 15th century all the way now to the 19th century. And now tomorrow, by the grace of the Most High, we're going to go into Daniel deep and get Philadelphia, because that's where we are now. Okay, that's where we are now. Okay, so yeah, so you go always have faithful ones. And so he said, for the most part, in Sardis, they weren't, but he had a few, he said, even in Sardis, that remembered who they were and still do to this day. Not quite as clearly as those of us being awakened now, obviously, because if them Ethiopian Hebrews really understood prophecy, they wouldn't be begging to go to Israel, and suffer the way they suffering over there. They wouldn't do it. But they don't know the prophecy given to us in Judah over here in the United States. Okay, in this lamb-like beast. We're gonna talk more about that. But by the grace of the Most High, that was Sardis. So next is Philadelphia, the biggest one, because this is where we are right now. So we're going to deal with that by the grace of the Most High tomorrow. Like I said, that's going to definitely take 2 sessions. And I want to get right into it. Whenever we start, get right into it and then take a break and get back into it, because it's going to be heavy tomorrow. I'm going to tell you right now. Okay. Pray for us, because our enemy is going to try to stop it. But pray for us. The Most High bless us that we can press forward and do what he asks us to do here. All right. So that's Sardis. Now we have finished 5 churches. Yep. You might have to go through this a couple of times. It's all good. The 5 churches. Now I got to wait until maybe tomorrow. Sometimes on the weekend, it takes a while where I can take out most of the ads. If you don't have the premium, you're going to see a million ads. I try to take them out and put them 10 minutes or 15 minutes apart, so that they're less. But if I don't get to it, that you'll see this there, but it's going to be full of ads at first. So praise the Most High. But that's Sardis. Now we finished 5 churches. We're going to come and all of these churches, just to let you know, are foundational when we go to the 7 seals. Foundational. So we're going to build on this with the seals, and then we're going to build on both of them with the trumpets. Okay, so you're going to see all that. All right. Well, praise the Most High Yah. May he bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Most High Creator Yah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom.